Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 42, Getting Your Classroom Organized. That's a big deal. I know that especially during back to school, you're trying to figure out where everything's going to go and the perfect place to put your writing supplies and the perfect place for kids to store their own materials and how you're going to get papers to students and from students, and the list goes on and on. So organization is very important to run an effective and efficient classroom. I hope you'll stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so today we're talking all about organization in your classroom. And that can be a very touchy subject, especially when you are a bit of, I don't want to call someone a slob or a mess. And I'm actually talking about myself because I tend to have a lot of clutter for some reason. I try really hard to be organized and to make sure that I've got a system for things and a place for things and a process for things so that I can be more efficient. But my brain, it's like going all the time. And sometimes, I just put things down wherever I am, and that's not where it's supposed to go. And I know it used to drive my ex-husband crazy in this way, and it was a bone of contention for sure. So, and now I see exactly what he was talking about because my son is the same way and he leaves everything everywhere all the time. It's a giant mess and it drives me insane. And I'm like, maybe this is what I was doing. So I have lived and learned. But one of my favorite quotes is from Albert Einstein. It's about one of my favorite quotes about organization, I should say. I have lots of favorite quotes about life in general, but about organization, Albert Einstein says, if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign? So every time I felt guilty about my cluttered desk, I would think about this and I would say, that's right, my mind is not empty, it is so full, and that's why my desk looks like this. So before we get started talking about organization, I want to remind you that I've talked a little bit for the last couple of weeks about some various ways that you might, or reasons you might consider being like creating a digital course. And teachers, we have such a little amount of time, and we are so overwhelmed. And often we also get some professional development that isn't at an optimal learning time for us. It's always at the end of the day when we are exhausted and we can no longer think straight. And we're doing it when we have to get our rooms ready for back to school and we can't concentrate on that because our rooms are a hot mess. And so I think professional development at your own time period, at your own time frame, is certainly the way to go. So I think a digital course for teachers would be incredible, an incredible opportunity. And you might have a lot to share. You might have a process or a method or a system or a step-by-step plan. And creating a digital course can be something that you bring to your future. Not only does it generate revenue, but it also puts your message out there into the world, and other teachers and ultimately students can benefit from that message, which I think is really cool. So if you're interested in creating a digital course and thinking about this as like a long-term thing, like going in it for the long haul, then you want to grab Amy Porterfield's free Digital Course Academy Startup Kit. And I will link to that in the show notes because it is very helpful helping you think through maybe what kind of course you might want to create. So check that out. All right, let's get to organization because we are going to be talking about all things organized. And again, this topic can be kind of tricky sometimes because we often, people that are like me, who are a little bit messy or maybe a lot messy, can sometimes feel like a lot of organization can be stifling. But I have come to realize that it actually really helps me, and that the messier something is, the more I have a very hard time being focused, and so I need that organization. I think it's interesting for that. Like I can be messy because and it's not often like I'm doing it on purpose. It's just that I put something down in the moment because I'm so quick, or my mind is working so quickly that I need to get to the next thing, that I forget where I left the last thing, and I create this mess for myself, which I know my son, he does the same thing. But then we do not work very well in a really messy environment because it's distracting. So I think it's interesting that we create it, yet it doesn't work for us. So I'm always like, okay, I got to get myself organized. So I've worked really hard on this in the past many decades to make this better for myself. And so I wanted to share some of those things with you now, because maybe you are like me where it's hard, or maybe you're super organized already and you have something to share, which I would love to hear. So comment on the show, let me know, give me an organizational tip, share that with others, direct message me. I'd love to hear your organizational strategies. So on one hand, we can think of it in two different ways. We can think of it as like the cluttered desk with a cluttered mind, or a mind full of ideas and information, and it's constantly going. Or we can think of like, how are we going to like streamline this and make it more efficient? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So here are some suggestions for getting things done, or like creating a to-do list. Now, I definitely am a list person. I need a list. I'll tell you what's more helpful for me than just a list that I can check off, and I have to be able to check it off. I need the satisfaction of checking it off. But what's better for me than a list is actually sticky notes. And I know that sounds crazy, and I'll have like a bunch of sticky notes on my desk, but that way I know when it's finished, I can take that sticky note and I can crumple it up and throw it in the trash. Each thing that I need to do is on one sticky note. I can't put it on multiple things on a sticky note, because then I won't be able to crumple it up with the satisfaction of knowing it's finished. So that's one of the things that I use. Now, some people will use things like paper trays where they have like a need to do category or a done category. And I've seen metal clips that say to do and can wait, like so that you've organized papers like maybe that you need to work on in the future, or ones that need to be done like right then. I think the system that I found the most beneficial has been on like digital things. And you can also have that satisfaction of moving it and getting it out of your way. One example is Airtable. I think Airtable, it's free. It's like a spreadsheet. You can create columns and sticky notes, and you can use that to move sticky notes away from what you need to get done. So I think Airtable is really helpful. But another tool, another platform like this is called Trello, which is a similar style, and it is free. And you can customize it. You can make like your own background. It has different, images to choose from. I think you can even upload your own, which I think would be really cool. And you can create categories and sections, and you can, there's little things that you can do. You can even be a checklist. There's little things that you can do to make it have that same sense of like that you'd get from a paper to-do list. The reason I like digital is because, like I said, sometimes I put things down and I can't remember where I put them, and I get really stressed out when I can't find my to-do list. So things like Airtable or Trello make it so that I can find my to-do list no matter where I am, as long as I have connection to the internet, which I think is super, super helpful. And again, like, what I love about both of those systems, Trello and Airtable, is that you can move things around and you still get that feeling of satisfaction. You can create a task and you can move it to done, and it's like you can check things off. And I don't know, for some reason, the whole checking off and moving around makes me feel more accomplished. And I know that that's really only in my head, but hey, a girl has to do what a girl has to do. So whatever it takes. So that's just one suggestion. I also, like I said, I'll also use real sticky notes, and I like that. And I really found out a beneficial task, and I feel like Michael Hyatt might have said it in his focused book, and now I can't remember the exact name of it. It's I can't remember it's a really good one. It's a really good book about being focused when it's definitely Oh, my Siri just went off, so I don't know why. But so that's something to look into. But one of the things he talks about is making sure that you have like 5 things per day that you want to get done. So, and just starting with 5 because you want to feel accomplished and not overwhelmed. And then you can organize them by importance, which is why I like things like Trello, because you can move it around. And if you were writing on a piece of paper, you would have to erase or cross out or mark 1 through 5 or something. And that's messy. And so then I feel unorganized again. But once you are done with the task, once you've done or finished with the 5 things, and you crumple it, you throw it away, or you mark it off or check it or whatever you need to do. But I think having 5 things rather than the 25,000 things you need to do can help. And so maybe you create like that list of 25, because I know when I'm first starting in my classroom, my list is like massive. Like I have to start making a list or I'm going to forget things that I need to do. And I think if I go ahead and I take 5 things at a time, though, when I start the next day and I take the 5 top priorities and I'm like, these are the 5 things I'm going to get finished. As soon as I'm finished with those 5 things, then like I get to do something that's kind of rewarding to myself. I don't want to tell myself I only have 5 things and then I end up doing 25 things, because I almost like I'm teaching myself that I'm not going to honor my own word. So I want to be careful about that. But I do, when you have such a long list, you kind of have to look at it as I'm going to give how much time you realistically have. Like I'm going to give myself this amount of time, and then I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to go talk to a colleague for 20 minutes and, build a relationship and like release my brain for a little while. And then I'm going to retackle the next 5 things of the utmost importance. And that way you can kind of feel like a sense of accomplishment. You can trust yourself when you've told yourself it's only 5, you stop yourself. That's hard for me to stop myself. I tend to like push it a little longer when I tell myself I'm finished working. I will be finished by 5, and then I continue to go and go and go and go. And next thing I know, it's 7:30. And I think that's I don't think it's a healthy thing for a person to do, because then you can't really believe yourself. Like you're not honoring what you basically told your body and mind would be the finale, and you didn't, stick with it. And when I first heard that, and I don't remember where I heard that, but of course I don't remember. You're going to see a theme going. But when I first heard that, I was like, that's really fascinating. Like it's a way in which I've lied to myself. And I know that sounds extreme, but it really is. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to tell myself when I'm done, I'm done. And even right now, like as I'm recording this, I'm like, I'm going to be finished by 5, and it's 5:02. So, it's a perfect example of like where I didn't allow myself, I didn't honor what I said I was going to do. So now in my mind, I am setting an actual time, and I'm not going to go beyond it. Okay. So that's just some things you can do for your to-do list. Now, how would you organize your email system? I think this can be another really overwhelming task. I love in Gmail how they have set it apart between like your inbox, your social emails, and then promotional emails. That is one way of organizing, but I think also having a system of folders can help. I know when we moved to Office 365 in my school, it just felt so overwhelming all of a sudden, because there was no longer, we used to have categories. It was like we had a school group, and then you had a must-read group, and then you had your team group, and you would get emails in that way. So it was already kind of organized for you, instead of like, now email comes from the whole entire staff that is only relevant to a certain group of people. And it's like, now I had to open that email and waste however many minutes figuring out that I didn't need this for myself. So I think it's like really having a systemized system for your emails can be helpful. Like, maybe you use folders to reduce your inbox clutter, and you go ahead and you make it like requires immediate attention, needs to be done by the end of the week, can wait, or get a little more creative. Like make this a little bit more creative, and don't just make a folder to have a folder. You want to have a specific reason for it. Maybe it's like, I need to review this, or or even going through immediately and looking for the emails that you can just immediately delete, just so it clears up some of that space and it doesn't feel like so much clutter. I use categories or colors for my folders. I think that can be really helpful. Like red is for immediate, yellow is for done by Friday, green is it can wait. These kind of categories with like such as meetings, parents, vendors, it can really help. It really helps you figure out what you need to do next. And I think that can be really, really important. I've also heard people say that they quickly scan their email to place in a category. Like they look through it and they go, okay, I'm going to put this in a category, this in a category, and so on. And I think that can be really helpful too, because I feel like we do get a lot of junk, and we don't need to waste our time on things that are not relevant to us or that we don't really need. And then another tip for email is responding to your parents within 24 hours. I think that this is really good customer service. So I think if you get an email from a parent, that's one that you want to do immediately, or at least within the next 24 hours. Another way to organize in your classroom is to have an in and out system. I think this system it's very personal. It's a personal system. I know for me, I liked having mailboxes for each of my students. I used these paper trays for so long that were like stacked up. They weren't the prettiest look. And I finally actually did get real mailboxes, which was like, I was so happy. And I had 2 sets, and that sounds so old fashioned to have these mailboxes, but it was just a system that worked for me. And I had 1 set. I wanted 2 sets of mailboxes because one, I wanted them to have a place to turn things into me, and I had all the kids in alphabetical order, like labeled through a number. So it was really, and they had to put their number on their paper, so I could quickly sort through things and make sure that their numbers were in order. And when they turned things in, they turned it into their mailbox, and I had them labeled 1 through 20 or whatever, however many students you have. And it was easy for me to quickly put them together and keep them organized. I also like to have that was a place for them to turn things in, and I also like to give papers back to them. Like I wanted them to also have a place that was like a take-home mailbox. Like this is turning in, this is going out, and it took a lot of practice. It took a routine. A procedure in order for it to become a routine. And that was really important. But I tried to limit the days that I sent papers home. I tried to have on Mondays, I would try to send home any homework. I'm not a huge believer in homework, but I did homework for a long time before I really realized the research behind it and how there is a lot of research that supports that it's not beneficial. And so, I kind of regret having done that at all, especially after my kids went through school. And I'm like, I don't want to spend all of our time doing homework. But that's a whole nother subject. So, okay. So I'd send home homework or any papers that we did from the previous week that I had graded and I'd looked at, any other what I want to refer to as junk that I had to pass out from the office. Those kinds of things I put in I stapled and put in a take-home folder, and I also had the parents, the kids would usually do a little reflection on how their work went, and the parents had to sign it, and it all went home on Monday. And I felt like this really helped. And actually, I have a weekly folder signing sheet that I would like to give you. So it's going to be in the show notes. You can click on it and grab it so that you can use it in your classroom if you choose, and you'll be set. All right, you can also make an in and out system a lot simpler by having 1 basket to turn work into and then mailboxes in which to send things home. And remember, if you're using classroom jobs, which I think can be really, really helpful, and I just created a classroom job sheet or jobs, and I will put that in the show notes as well. You can take a look at that, but that's in my TBT store. And the jobs, I have a mail person, so they are responsible for sorting the papers into the in and out system, and it really helped me be efficient and also the thing I loved about having the turn in like to each individual mailbox was that I could quickly glance and see who had turned something in. I didn't have to like go through all the papers. I could look and see whose paper, whose slot was blank and be like, oh, this assignment is missing. So from this person. So that was really helpful as well. And again, I really liked having both sets because I liked having a place for them to turn something in, and I liked being able to give it back to them in a different spot. And if you're just checking something, like maybe you just want to look over it really quickly, you want to put like a check on it or a star or something, then you could, and you were doing that really quickly, you could literally stand at your mailboxes, check, take number 1 from the end, put it in the outbox, take 2 from the end, put it in the outbox. Put a check on it, put it in the outbox, 3, check, put it in the outbox. It was so easy. Then I didn't have all these papers to like go through. So that was really helpful too. So that's one way of being organized with your papers, like your papers that kids turn in. There's a lot more things being done digitally, which makes the whole paper thing 100 times easier. And using things like Google Classroom can sometimes also really help you keep those kinds of things organized, or having a system with folders if they're going to email things to you can be beneficial. So what about lesson plans? Like, how do you keep this organized? I feel like this is another like really personal, like a personal preference. And actually, anytime that we had to do like standardized lesson plans, I had a difficult time with that, because I really think that it needs to be your style. If these plans truly are for you to carry out your plan, your plan for the day, and maybe to provide evidence that you have incorporated standards and, the 5E model or the gradual release or whatever your philosophy is, then I want to be able to create the lesson plans the way that I want to and not have it all be exactly the same. That drives me crazy. But again, you got to do what works for you. Like for me, I believe you got to do what works for you. And I used to love using Google Docs to organize my lesson plans. I had a template and I would upload it to Google Slide and use it as my, my regular template all the time. And then I could just add text boxes right over it. And if I wanted circles or squares or whatever, I loved using Google, and it made it easy. It also made it really easy to share or collaborate with my colleagues, or even to collaborate on lesson plans. Like we could do, using a Google Doc, using Google Drive, I guess it's called now. You could, share the document with your team, and then people could add things in. So it was really great for team planning. After a while, my school ended up mandating the use of planbook.org. And I liked it for me, but I hated that everyone else had to use it, like, because there were some cumbersome aspects and some people didn't love doing it. And I feel like, again, it's really personal. You should be able to make it like work for you. And things like using Google Drive, that you could create a different template. It could still be electronic. It could still be turned in electronically. It just doesn't because it can be shared with your principal. It just doesn't have to be in this plan book. I don't know. I guess for administration, that makes it maybe a little more difficult because they're going to get a variety of different, but still, then they need to figure out an organizational system, like so that they can see all the plans. And because I really just feel like it should be personal for teachers. That's my opinion about that. But anyway, so planbook.org does allow it to be digital, and it also allows you to like take all of your plans and literally copy and paste them to the next year, which can be really helpful, and then just make your tweaks according to the needs of your new class. And that is one of the benefits. State standards are also in these plan books on the paid versions, and I think that could be really helpful. Either way, I think you need to try to make something in your plans easier, because you spend so much time creating lesson plans and adding all the things that you have to have and all the high engagement strategies and the ELL strategies, and like repeating that every single week. It makes it 100 times easier when you have like some of those things already in place in your plan or in your template. So taking the time to develop systems saves you time in the end. And it's kind of like not wanting to stop for gas because you're too busy. So eventually you have to. So if you do the template in advance, you spend some time on that, then it just makes it easier every single week. Another place that requires some really good organization is your classroom library. And I love making sure that my books are labeled and organized. And I've always had like a leveled section of my library. And because I feel like I want my kids like to be kind of shopping for their just right book. And I won't go on a tangent about that because I don't feel like every single book that they have has to be a just right book. And I don't feel like keeping kids in a leveled book the whole entire time. Like they need to be able to read for purpose, and they need to be able to read for pleasure, and they need to be able to like pick and choose books sometimes. So I feel kind of strongly about that, but I will save that conversation for another time. But my leveled section, well, it did consist of a range. It wasn't like just if they're level G, they're just G. No, it was like a range of books that they had, maybe F, G, H. And kids I'd give them a shopping card. It was kind of like a grocery list of where to shop from. And then each card contained a certain amount of books from their just right range. And then they had a few from the easy range because that really helps with fluency. And then they had several free choice picks from anywhere. And again, I won't get on my soapbox about like letting them pick because I think they get to have some free choice. That's just my feelings on that. I also had a nonfiction section. And that was another, organized part of my library. It was labeled by topics, and it had, I had labels on all of I had all my books in book baskets. Actually, I felt like it was much easier to keep from getting cluttered. Like when you just have books in a bookcase, there's no way they'll ever stay okay. Not to mention it's really hard for littler kids to pick books from just the spine of a book. Like they need to see the front of it. And if they're flipping through books in a basket, sometimes that really gives them, helps them figure out what book they want. But all of the rest of my library was labeled by author or genre or book series. And that was really fun for the kids. Like if they loved Mo Willems, so I had I had a section of Mo Willems, and I have Kevin Henkes and Patricia Polacco, and then I might have a book, or I might have a basket on characters or realistic fiction or something like that. And it just made it easier for them to figure out what kind of books they wanted to shop. It also helped them better understand genre and authors, and that was like that organization really helped my readers. But I love to have lots of choices. And I wanted to I always had so many books, like hundreds and hundreds of books. It was probably more than that. It was actually more. I know it was more than that. It was like thousands of books. I ended up giving my classroom library away when I left teaching, a couple years ago. Now I'm back in the school system, and that's part of the reason I would probably never go back into a classroom, because I don't know what I would do without my massive library. And I gave it away. I didn't even sell it. I just gave it away. And I think I even gave them the baskets and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. But that was one of my favorite parts of the classroom. So baskets and labels that's just one way you can organize your classroom library. I know that there have been many summers that I've spent numbering my baskets and then putting the corresponding number on the back of the book. That was like the best way that I organized my library, because then if it was, number 1 and it had a 1 on it, then the kids, they didn't have to just search for that. Let's say the first basket I did was in the leveled section and it was like a red book. Like they didn't have to search the back of the book for it, or they didn't have to search for like that basket. They knew it went in basket 1, and that was a huge help in organization. It was a mammoth task, though. I'm not going to lie. It took weeks, but it took me really 15 years to figure that out. And 15 out of the 19, and it worked. It totally worked. It totally kept my books organized. It was really easy for my library helpers to that are also on my job list to help put things away and keep it organized. And they did it. The kids did it. Like they kept it very organized, and that helped. I want to give you a tip though. Allowing each team to shop on a specific day, that really helps too, because it helps prevent kids from pretending like they're getting a new book every 5 seconds. And like I said, I had thousands of books. So each student had like a book basket with at least 10 books for the week. And if your library isn't that big, then you may need to allow them to shop more frequently, but that really helped. And I also found some really good book baskets from the Dollar Tree, and you can get those online. I'll try to find the link if I can and put that in the show notes, because those baskets were like the best. Another thing for like supplies, like how you could organize your supplies is, you kind of have to think that through. Do you want supplies to be individual, or do you have a class, a group or team supplies? I used a caddy style for the middle of the desks, and I found those at like the Dollar Tree or IKEA or Dollar General or Walmart or whatever. Some years I used like wooden baskets that were really cute, and other times I used like 10 like caddy things, and that was, cute. But the tip really is to have everything labeled. If you have everything labeled, then kids know where to put things, and that's big. And if you're going to implement a makerspace this year, then you need to make sure that you label everything, because that space can become a hot mess. And that is something that drives me crazy. So you want to have baskets and buckets and crates and bins or whatever, and you want to have a home for your supplies and your tools, and you need to have a label. And I also have, makerspace labels and things in my store as well, and I'll link to that. And then, so that pretty much covers like the organization of a classroom, making sure things are labeled, having a place for things. The easier it is for kids to get it and put it away, the easier it is to keep things organized. So that is one of your tasks, is to make sure that you have things organized and labeled and set. And I think you should also check out Trello and Airtable, because it can be really helpful. And you can really help you prioritize what you need to get done in the very beginning of back to school. All right, so that's all I have on organization. I'm sure that there are some experts out there, and I would love to hear from you, because you probably have some really incredible systems that you have in place that I would love to share. I'd actually love to share your comments on a future episode, because organization was always like, it was a struggle for me. It was totally a struggle for me. So I'd love to hear about that from you. So, leave a comment. And maybe that would be a really great PD, a course on organization for teachers. So that's a course idea right there. So if you're thinking about it, then you can grab that Digital Course Academy starter kit and like start brainstorming. All right, until next time, this one tired teacher is ready for a long, long snooze. Sweet dreams and sleep tight.